I'll say before I get into this, the amount of fucking people on Twitter that are like, controllers are prohibitively expensive. That's my issue. My issue is that top players just get access to the best controllers. I'm like, do you know what you had to do 10 years ago to get a good controller? Buy like 5 to 10, hope one of them developed good PODE, and then try to maintain it as long as possible by using the rest at events that didn't matter, and you probably wind up losing a few because of that. Because when that controller broke, you had to go through the process all over again. And then they're like, I want to pay $200 for a fob. I'm like, you had to pay probably like $200 for one batch of shitty controllers and pray one of them worked and was going to last for 3 months. That's how you got a good controller. Just because you see my controller now, it looks better than yours, doesn't mean it wasn't substantially better 10 years ago. You had to get a broken controller for it to dash back. Let's see what this is. Okay.
Many controller manufacturers understand that their devices are capable of significantly better performance relative to even the best OEM GameCube controllers, and so willingly nerf their devices. Many tournaments, however, have little or no
some unwillingly
regulation on these controllers
just trying to throw that out
besides
there.
what the manufacturers and players self-impose, other than limitations on macros. This has led to an uneasy arms race, where manufacturers wish to release the best controller possible, and players wish to use those controllers.
Did anyone actually try, outside of the Goomwave, has anyone actually tried to just make the most broken controller possible? I feel like no, because Smashbox wasn't exclusive to Melee. I feel like nobody actually just tried to outright make the best controllers, right? Unless I'm crazy. I feel like everyone was pretty good about trying to work within what was within reason.
This rule set seeks to modernize Melee's controller rules and level the playing field for all controller types. As of the release of this video, this process is complete, and the rule set has been submitted to major tournament organizers for review.
First day is January, that's tomorrow. Well, I mean, that's now. But I'm assuming we'll see more.
Like controllers. Some of these, most notably the Goomwave, have behaviors that we consider ban-worthy. Some specific culprits include Goomwave's easy up tilt and easy dash back out of crouch, where the controller detects incorrect inputs that look similar to an intended up tilt or dash back, respectively, and instead tells Melee that the input was performed properly.
Also for ledge dashing, again, this controller is fucking stupid. I actually don't know how this was legal. Yeah, this control. Yes, I tried telling you guys. This is why when Mango was complaining about Z-Jump and he was winning on a Goomwave, I was like, what are we doing here? Bro, you cannot complain about Z-Jump in the same fucking breath as using a Goomwave. There's no universe that they're even comparable. There just isn't. Like Mango. No, I get where he's coming from. But he's a fucking idiot when it comes to this one.
For these reasons, the rule set will ban
Z-Jump banned. I got bad news for you,
but
Muhib.
this does not prevent someone from writing compliant firmware that can be used with existing Goomwave hardware. Also, some GCC-like controllers have the ability to recalibrate your notches. That is, you can tell your controller what value you want each notch to have. The rule set does not ban this. Instead, it sets reasonable limits to how far a notch can be calibrated.
Yeah, I don't think calibration should ever be banned, for the record. That would be fucking stupid to ban calibration, as long as you can't do any, like, messed up stuff on it.
Calibrated notches don't provide an in-game advantage over physical notches, so they can stay legal. The rule set will require that all third-party controllers make some specific parts of their firmware's source code available for inspection.
This is huge. This is huge. Everyone's controller has to be, you have to be able to check the source. You can't come in with some bullshit and nobody knows what's going on. This is probably, unironically, the biggest improvement that we have, because now if someone's using some fucked up shit, we can immediately see that and be like, all right, you're banned, DQ'd, whatever. This one, huge, gigantic change. Love this. Everything should be open source, hard agreed.
Alt F4 has graciously built us an input checker, which tournament organizers can quickly use to detect whether each player is using an analog controller or a leverless controller, and whether or not it believes they are running non-compliant firmware. Second, Swift has graciously agreed to provide his perspective on the parts of the rule set that impact leverless controllers.
Swift has also been playing on the nerfs for a year, by the way, just so anyone who wants to know like his take on it.
The goal with the nerfs is to bring digital controllers to a level more on par with GameCube controllers.
Yep.
I think even with the nerfs, digital controllers still offer some advantages over normal GameCube controllers. Okay, so I have two controllers here. This box is not nerfed, and this prism is nerfed. So I'm going to use the two to compare. So the first thing that we'll talk about is SOCD. So currently, box controllers have it set to a mode called second input priority. which has it so that whatever your second input is going to completely override your initial movement button, and you're going to move that direction.
Before they get into anything, the reason I think no matter what that should be illegal isn't even because it necessarily provides you with an obvious advantage. It's because you physically can't do that. Even if it doesn't give you like a gigantic advantage, you physically cannot do left and then right at the same time on a GameCube controller. You physically cannot do that. So the number one thing that I personally don't like in controllers is when it allows you to do something that you physically, and I mean like physically can't do on a normal controller. So if it allows you to do techniques or time things or buffer things in a way that you can't normally do, in my opinion, instantly like that's a no-go.
Basically, I'm holding left and then I press right, and then it'll just cancel out and make me move right. So this makes movement a lot more lenient, and it's part of why box players move around much quicker in general than controller players. And also opens the door like a really easy way to ledge dash by using the SOCD. There you go. Neutral SOCD will now be what's required. So if you're holding down one direction and you press the opposite direction, they'll both cancel each other out.
Which makes sense, because that's like going to neutral.
It requires a bit more deliberate inputs for the player, and it puts more skill into quickly changing directions.
Dude, oh my god. I tried to not think about the box when I played against it, because I never wanted to get annoyed by it. But that's crazy. You literally didn't have to take your finger off. All you had to do was instinctively press the other button, and then it just worked. I hate that.
It's the analog stick of the
I hate that.
controller.
No, so they're not supposed to be advantageous. They're supposed to make it so that you can have a different way to play so you don't kill your hands. That's it. But think about it this way. If they were intentionally advantageous, then it would be pointless for you to play on a GameCube controller. Like, you should just switch to a box at that point. So you're asking people who've played the game for 15, 20 years and do it for a living to all of a sudden nuke a year or two of their career to switch to a box, which is just not fair.
Box controllers don't have this.
Nope.
They just go from here and then warp to their desired value. This makes digital controllers quicker and more precise than GameCube controllers.
Yeah, no
The
problem.
solution
Next.
to this is a simulated travel time.
Wait, seriously, Emily? Thank
When you
you.
move the control stick with the digital button, instead of the output instantly jumping to the target coordinate, the controller must output a series of values that sweep from the initial location to the target location over the course of 6 to 12 milliseconds. That way, the game has the same chance of pulling your controller at one of these intermediate values, similar to a GameCube controller.
The thing is, so here's what people need to accept. Maybe in a month we figure out that there's another thing that's dumb and we need to fix it. But as long as people are putting active effort into this and trying new shit out, this is all new stuff. No, this is everything you're seeing now is stuff that they're adding in to make sure that people have to abide by. Before, there was no polling issue on a box. Like, you never were going to miss an input because of polling, ever.
Since there's so
But
many
it's a process.
tiny little areas, so
Also, there's a universe where we realize we overcorrected and we have to make it a little bit better because it's actually just shit now. That's possible. Who knows?
close to each other. It's basically impossible to consistently aim for the same specific coordinate over and over again. Trying to do so will result in you hitting all the coordinates around that area and sometimes hitting that same coordinate, but it's never consistent. Digital controllers don't have this problem. When digital controllers have a coordinate set, it is the exact same coordinate every single time. To account for this, the targeted coordinate will now be in the center of a 3x3 grid of coordinates that will be chosen at random. On the diagram here, the red is the target and the pink is the grid.
Sure.
The grid to the left represents the chance of each coordinate being output.
Until we get to a point where controllers are able to avoid polling, it's probably one of the best ways to bring it in line with a controller. Keep in mind, all these changes are reversible if we find ways to make GameCube controllers also better. None of this stuff is permanent. And this isn't even necessarily like our desired endgame. This is just a way to make things even for now. And then hopefully, the ideals in the future, we can also not have polling issues with the GameCube controller. Like, that's the ideals. In the future, polling issues also are no longer a problem with the GameCube controller.
This range is so minor that it's not noticeable in normal gameplay while still preventing certain coordinate perfect tech.
This is so minor, it's ridiculous. It's really meant to prevent people from being able to do like frame perfect shit over and over and over again that you really can't do on a controller. So like think of like a Peach Parasol dash where on Smashbox it's perfect, you can do it perfectly, even though I know those coordinates aren't allowed. In theory, in this one, now all of a sudden that's not reliable anymore. You can't just do that, which is objectively a good thing. No, it would not be enough to mess with shield drop, because shield drop is such a large range that all you have to do is have the value in the middle and it'll never miss. It's such a small amount it won't do anything.
As it currently stands, there are no actual limitations for what angles a player can put on their controller. The rule set has made the cutoff for legal recovery angles 20 degrees. The decision to not have the cutoff at the default 23 degrees was due to the common sentiment that edgeguarding digital controller players was much easier, and Firefox notches have become very prevalent in top-level play. There will also be an angle limitation on wave dashes, with the longest possible wave dash being 27 degrees. For context, the current default box wave dash is 30 degrees. Different characters sometimes prefer different wave dash angles, so two firmwares will be released.
Okay, which makes it a little worse.
Wave
Fine.
Dash and one with a 30-degree wave dash. There's also going to be lockouts implemented.
Sure.
So there's SDI lockouts that prevent getting egregious amounts of SDI. It's hard to get an example of it side by side, but from experience, it definitely feels like it's worse.
SDI on box pisses me off, so I'm down with that.
There will be a pivot up tilt and a pivot down tilt lockout.
Oh, they can't do that shit anymore. Dark Hero, your time's up. Sorry, bud.
A lockout on crouch up tilt that has you jump if you do it too fast.
Oh, I like that. That's actually pretty good about... That looks pretty similar to what it looks like on a game controller. They actually did a good job with that timing. Dude, okay, not even joking. Jake and I were playing at... we were like warming up at Warehouse War. And we both looked up at the same time, saw Dark Hero get a pivot up tilt tech chase on a platform. We looked at each other, just shook our heads silently, and went back to playing. It was just a moment of like understanding between us where we're like, that was so fucked up that I don't even know what to say about it. And we just chose to ignore it and go on about our day. It was a very intimate moment.
You cannot change the C stick and A button location. This is primarily done to prevent the abuse of ASDI down by preventing players from
Good. That shit's broken.
Putting the C stick down button in a much more convenient spot on the controller. For example, if you have a layout like this, abusing ASDI down is much easier since it frees up your thumb to do work with the other C-stick buttons in A while your ring finger alone is messing with C-stick down. If you have two modifiers, then you can use the C-stick in conjunction with the modifier to change your angles. If you have more than two modifiers, you cannot use the C-stick to adjust your angles. This only applies to a small subset of Smashbox users, since every other commonly used digital controller already follows this rule.
Okay, sure.
Those are the major
some
points
bullshit
in the
Smashbox
rule
can
set.
do, which is
If
unsurprising.
you'd like to know more, feel free to check out the full rule set documentation that will probably be linked to this video.
I think it's a really good start. The thing is, we could also realize that we over-nerfed it. I don't know. That's entirely possible that down the road when people get like super duper ultra cracked with the game, we're like, oh wait, these controllers actually kind of suck now. We don't really know. But I think this is just a good beginning location. So I'm going to play devil's advocate and go. So I'll give you guys the Google Doc. So Z-Jump's still safe from out. Z-Jump is never going. Okay, I'm telling you this. You can post it on Reddit. I don't care. If a box controller exists in any capacity, or if any third-party controller exists in any capacity, they will not get rid of button remapping. It is not going anywhere because it is by far the least egregious advantage you can possibly get. If you want a universe where there's no boxes, no fobs, no cut springs, no trigger plugs, no notches. Notches are way better than Z-Jump. No mouse clicks, no ergo triggers. And then you want to get rid of remapping? Yeah, then that is a logically consistent stance. I'm down for that, sure. But pretty much what they did, Goomwave, for the only major controller changes we have are no up tilt rounding on Goomwave, which good, that shit was dumb. No easy dashback out of crouch on Goomwave, good, that shit was dumb. For this, neutral CD, which pretty just makes it that you have to release a button to press another button on a direction, otherwise it does nothing, which just should have been the way it is to begin with. You will see a lot of box players start missing dashes because they probably didn't even realize, even if they didn't intentionally do it, the amount of box players that probably didn't realize they weren't switching fast enough is going to be very high. So people will start messing up. Trial time simulation just makes it so that hopefully, you don't feel like you're playing against someone with a faster dash in a ditto. Control stick output fuzzing, which doesn't actually change that much. It just makes it so you can't do frame perfect stuff repeatedly over and over again perfectly every single time, which good. Limits on available coordinates and angles, which is just a trade-off because you're playing on a more reliable controller. And then timing lockouts, essentially SDI. People are going to have to use the nerfs. Probably the biggest part of this, you already said, everything is now open source. So you can't use a controller that isn't like available to be tested in any capacity. We have to know everything your controller can do. You have to be able to provide it. If you can't use it. Simple as that. which, great change. Great change. Is Nouns Ball the first one that's going to be using it? To my knowledge, yes. What about Genesis? Genesis will not be using it. It is too soon. Luckily, none of the box players are that good right now. So, thankfully, nobody is going to be doing that. All I'm going to say, if you're a box player, be honorable. Use the nerfs of Genesis. That's all I'll say. Be honorable. Is this a suggestion or is this being enforced? This is being enforced. This is all stuff that is going to be being enforced going forward, which, thank God. Even if this isn't perfect. Okay, so playing devil's advocate, few preemptive things. First off, notches, maybe a target in the future. Not right now. I think that the team's direction is pretty clear. Get the box in line, and then we'll worry about controllers. And honestly, as much as I know I am obviously biased, I kind of agree with that logic. Let's deal with the elephant in the room that everyone is 100% on board is a problem. And then after that, we can go to the things that we think are problems on game controllers. Button remapping, that's not going anywhere. I'm sorry to tell you. I don't care how much you hate it. Get used to it and stop bitching. Who uses Goomwave? I think... So, to my knowledge, none of the players that still use Goomwave use the cheating ones. Button remapping's not going anywhere. You... Just... I'm sorry. Like, I don't care what your opinion on it is. If a box exists, you're not getting rid of button remapping. Oh my god! Bro! Okay, so do you know how you tell who the Goomwave cheaters are? Because this shit's actually really funny. Apparently, you just check SLPs and it just comes up instantly. Oh no, every top player is going to get their SLPs checked. The thing is, you have to know what to look for. But yeah, overall, I think this is a pretty good start. I'm happy that someone actually is making a stance and trying to change controllers because this has been a pain in the butt for a while. Also, I'm going to say this, and there are going to be some players that are really unhappy with me for this, and honestly, I'm so past the point where I don't give a shit. God, everyone is such a bitch when it comes to controllers. Like, really, everyone's a bitch when it comes to controllers. For the effect that it actually has on the game, the amount of complaining done is, like, egregious. It's a joke. You should put any of that effort into actually just getting good. And I promise you, you'll be better off. Like, this is getting handled. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. I promise you. It's really not a big deal.